Hey there, multi-prep teachers. You know how professional development never seems to quite get to what we need? It's like, great idea, but how do I make this work when I have 3+ preps to juggle? That's exactly why I created the Simplify Your Preps Collective. It's a free Facebook group built just for teachers like you, where we share tips, resources, and real talk about making multi-prep teaching less overwhelming and more doable. Sound like your kind of space? Head to kristenmasick.com/collective and join us today. Let's simplify together. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about 3 practical and low prep ideas for keeping students engaged until the end of the school year. I will be talking about the benefits of playing with toys, incorporating games, and reading books aloud. So stay tuned for valuable insights to enhance your classroom experience and keep it together at the end of the school year as a multiple prep teacher. Welcome to the Secondary Teacher Podcast, the podcast for middle and high school teachers juggling multiple preps to get the strategies to reduce overwhelm so that you don't have to choose between being an effective teacher and prioritizing important relationships. I'm your host, Kristen Masick, a 10-year high school engineering teacher, former middle school assistant principal, and teacher coach. Every week, we will discuss strategies, systems, and time-saving tips to help you not only survive but thrive as a multiple prep teacher. Picture this. You are called into a faculty meeting and the principal says, hey, by the way, today is the last week of school. We'll be finishing in 3 days. Just so you know, that's when school is going to end. And while this sounds like what we went through with the pandemic, no, this is like my dream. But the dream is that we would all be leading up until the end of school and we just wouldn't know when it happened. And so your seniors and upperclassmen and even your lowerclassmen, all of your secondary students, they just wouldn't know. And it would just be a big surprise. There'd be a way for us to actually teach to the end of the school year because no one knew when it was really coming. And then the school year would just be over. So anyway, that is my dream. But unfortunately, that is not our reality. And typically, students know at this point of the school year, especially that things are wrapping up. There is testing going on in some classes. It could be even your class. But there's also this time where people are still asking you to teach up until the last day of the school year, which it's still one of the most frustrating things because once students check out, if they check out with their textbooks and once the seniors leave earlier, which is what happens here, is that students get excused 4 or 5 days prior to the end of school day, and you may have mixed classes. It makes it really difficult to motivate students to actually still do things. So I'm going to give you 3 ideas of things I used to do in my classroom that kept students engaged, but also wasn't a huge burden for me at the end of the school year. These are also 3 things that you can use throughout the school year, especially if you are trying to fill time at the ending of a class period when you may have run out, or I guess you didn't run out of time. You ran out of things to do, but you still wanted to keep your kids from packing up their bags and waiting by the door. The first one is playing with toys. Love playing with toys. Having something that may or may not be totally related is a great thing. We had Legos. We had a whole bunch of different building blocks and just different random things that if we had 5 or 10 minutes left of class, I could have students pull out buckets and they could play. So they could play with things. It was just fun. They just could play with things. Sometimes we would have a challenge or they would create their own challenge. But I had several different types of toys, so we could have different groups group up. But I loved having toys, just things that they could play with. This could also be Play-Doh or any sort of clay that just gets students doing something. And once again, it doesn't have to be related, but toys is one of my favorite things. The other thing are games. I love playing games with students. I love having it so that it is content related, but I also like doing games that just get students to interact with one another. There's just so many things that you can learn and gain from games as far as strategy, communication, just having fun, laughing with other people, your peers, has always been fun. One of the things that I have in my Teachers Pay Teacher store is Would You Rather. That's a fun game where it's not like too much risk as far as students can play it on the first day of school and not feel like they are divulging a bunch of like random information about themselves that they don't want anyone to know. But then there are also other games that you can play as far as like Taboo. Some of those are like review games, but then just having games to play, as simple as they are, tends to be a lot of fun. You can even find some of the old like classics for fairly low prices online. All right. And then my final one that I like to do a lot, and this was really inspired by a guest speaker at one point for PD. And I was reminded about it recently because I was talking to one of my colleagues who I share an office with, who is the science specialist coach for our district. And we were talking about reading aloud to our students. And when I had gone to this keynote speech, she had talked about how students love to be read aloud. Like anyone loves to listen. If you listen to audiobooks or, you're listening to a podcast right now, you like to hear things and learn things audibly. And right now I read to my children every single night and they absolutely love it. We're at that stage where we're reading series together. But then I was remembering we had been having these conversations, me and my colleague, and he was talking about how he has typically been reading fantasy, and which is what I'm currently reading right now with my own children. But then he has also been listening to the book, The Knowledge Gap, and where we need to have students, or I guess children in general, be reading nonfiction as well. And then I remembered the things that I used to read to my students in class. There was a variety of different things that I would read to my students and different ways that I would do it. Sometimes I would do it as the starter or the bell ringer, and sometimes I would do it at the conclusion of class, and sometimes it was intentional and we read a novel together or a book together. It wasn't necessarily a novel. But we had some invention books where they were really short and every chapter explained how something was invented. The book we would read was The Kid Who Invented the Popsicle. And so everything was like less than 5 minutes. Great way to really incorporate invention and engineering into my classes. But then another book that I had read was The Originals. And I read this with my capstone class. And the idea behind that book is that it goes over some inventions and why they failed and why they succeeded. And so it really got them thinking. My students, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting them to love it as much as they did, but it was something that I look back on and I enjoyed it. And even the following year, the students asked, are we going to read that again? And we actually ended up reading another book that I can't recall at the moment, but it was just some fun, insightful things. I will say that with the book, if it's something that you're going to read with the entire class, you may need to talk to your administration, find out if there's any policies that certain books need to be approved. Is it something that's in your library? Especially with right now, there's a lot going on as far as like book banning goes. So make sure that you are getting things approved and there are things that you are able to do in class. But I just wanted to share this at the end of the school year because I hope that there are one or more things that you might be able to incorporate now that really offer very little prep to no prep at all. These are some great ways to spend it. So the first was toys, investing in toys, manipulatives, things that multiple students can play with at once, and having just different bins to allow students to go to and grab those whenever they need to. The next is games, investing in games. And then the final one was finding some books that you would like to read aloud to your students, whether that be as an entire class reading an entire book together, or whether you are just using a book and reading a chapter or two every single day or every other day or whenever you have the time. Those are 3 things that can save you a ton of time, low to no prep at all. They can just be on your shelf ready to go whenever you need to teach from bell to bell or fill in the class period. If today's episode was helpful to you, it could be for others. One way that teachers can find out more about this podcast is if you write a review. So if you go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a rating and review, letting teachers know the value that you are getting from this podcast is one way that they can find us. The other way is to share on your socials. And if you are on Instagram, you can tag me at Kristen Masick, KristenMasic. Until next week.